right. Hello and welcome to everyone who's joined us today with us at the Lockdown Conversations. We are on episode number 7. It's been 7 weeks already that we started these conversations. The idea was when all of us were in lockdown, why don't we use this time to constructively discuss and debate topics that are of importance to us, not essentially talking just about the things like fear, panic, and our immediate concerns, but to sort of take the conversations beyond, looking into the future and thinking of things that we can do today for a better tomorrow. And so far in 6 episodes of Lockdown Conversations, so far we've spoken of a variety of topics, including people who are working to keep our nations running, securing our people, the second line of heroes. We've spoken of topics such as cryptocurrency, and we've also spoken of uh, interesting things such as video editing, storytelling, so on and so forth. And throughout these 6 conversations, we've had an opportunity to hear from incredible individuals, people who've come from really different and diverse backgrounds, and people who come from really different parts of the world as well. So today, we wanted to talk about a topic that is really close to all of our hearts, and that is the planet, because that's only one thing that we have. And it is imperative for all of us to be able to take care of the planet so that we can give ourselves and also the future generations a better future. So we invited 4 incredible individuals who are working in their own capacity to work towards a better planet in one way or other. I will introduce them as we've got Abhishek Kawitkar, who is the president of the Tree Republic and works extensively in the Pune region. Then we've got Mehul Shah, who's a senior video engineer, a camera engineer, and who's also somebody who works in the area of environment and climate quite a lot. We also have Neha Wasnik, who's tuning in with us today from Americas. And Neha is also has been, very active in the climate space, and she's been an activist herself. So we would have an opportunity to hear from Neha as well. I see a little smile breaking in, so we'll get to hear a bit more from her in terms of what she does and what her thoughts in this space are. We've also got Shubham Gupta today, and Shubham will speak a bit more about Let Me Breathe, an initiative that works towards better air quality for all of us. We'll also talk about things like how do we take care of biodiversity. This planet isn't just made for humans. There are animals, flowers, fauna, everything needs to flourish together, and we need to look at everything as one ecosystem so that we can take care of it in a holistic way. So we've got quite a broad range to cover. Now, one thing we've observed in recent times is because of the lockdown, there has been a slight but a welcome change in our air quality already. So we've seen that when economic activity slows down, the environment gets an opportunity to flourish and sort of regain some of its lost features. So we'll talk a lot about that, what governments can do, but more importantly, this isn't just about policymakers, this isn't just about governments, this isn't just about Microsofts and the large organizations. This is also something that you and me, we can do in our own capacities. So without further ado, I will open out the discussion, but I'll also give a big shout out to the co-host, Pratik Gandhi, who's also joining us. So on that note, Pratik, do you want to fire the first question to one of our panelists?
Yep. Thanks a lot, Yogesh. This has been a great journey so far. And thanks, guests, for joining for this one. I'd like to kickstart with a question to Neha. Neha, I know closely, I've been following you. You've been working with quite a few nonprofits in this area, like climate change and so on. So do you want to walk us through as to what you are doing, and even talk about how you got interested in this space in general while you were doing things that you were doing on the side?
Hi, thanks, Pratik. Thanks for having me. And thank you all for being here. So I don't work with quite a few nonprofits. I just volunteer for the Boston chapter of Association for India's Development. I got interested through my marriage into this association because my husband was already volunteering for it. They are primarily a nonprofit organization working from the United States, who are facilitating, enabling partners in India and nonprofits in India who are, uplifting and fighting for the rights, human rights of marginalized communities. These are communities who are the tribals, the Adivasis, in the heartland of India. These are communities who are marginalized based on their caste, based on their religion, based on their gender, based on their sexuality, who have been pushed to live in abject poverty. And yesterday, in fact, I shared a story, Instagram story on, for those of you who don't follow me, and those of you who have followed me but missed it, shared that this particular pandemic has been really harsh and cruel on these marginalized communities, because without it as well, it's not like they were having a relatively better life. And with the lockdown, it's just abject poverty and you know crushing your head on a rock put together. So if there was any way, humanly or inhumanly possible, to aggravate their plight, this pandemic has achieved that. Uh, while we are privileged enough to be, you know, enjoying our work from homes and our, lockdown vacations, these people don't have that privilege, and these people don't. Lockdown is actually stepping, putting a foot on their livelihoods. So this organization and the chapter that I volunteer for, and I volunteer on in terms of what I usually do professionally, which is marketing and which is social media support. So I give them social media support and awareness and voice, and in whatever little way I can, I do push as much of their efforts out into the world. And all of you are welcome to log into their Instagram page and their Facebook page to see what kind of efforts, especially COVID-19 relief efforts, that have been aggressively being undertaken by this organization. If you don't mind, I could show you a few slides that I have prepared on a presentation. And I would like to share some screen.
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, now we can. Awesome.
Okay. So, yeah, that's what the organized. Oh.
No, I was just
sorry.
sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what the name of the organization is, and their COVID relief efforts are primarily aimed at providing critical needs, that is the PPE for the healthcare workers that are in these regions, and the food supplies for the communities that are living in these regions, and the educational material in their regional languages, because they need to firstly understand what is happening in the world, and not go by hearsay or shouldn't get lost in translation primarily. So the aim has been to raise about $1 million in funds for the efforts that we are hoping to provide. And somehow it's falling. We have raised about, and this is from the 5th of May. This slide is from 5th of May. So this is as recent as about a week. We have raised about $400,000. First, the aim was for $500,000. And now the raised value is 400,000, and the disbursement that has happened, because as soon as we raise the money, the disbursement happens immediately towards different parts of the country, and the parts of the country are highlighted here in color codes. So Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, Gujarat, many other states in south of India, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka. There are projects that are currently happening in Jharkhand, in Uttar Pradesh, in West Bengal, in Andhra, Chhattisgarh, and Maharashtra. Um, Besides these, there are other efforts that we are already providing, because as you can, if you can read the names of these partners that we are providing these funds to and supporting in different ways. Let me minimize this. Yeah. So like, for example, Faridabad, Amal Ke Pehel is an partner that in Faridabad, Haryana, who were provided food supplies, for 300 daily wage laborers. These are the migrant laborers and workers in this region. Masks were provided for these people in the bastis, and advocating for government aid and schemes was also, yeah, that is what I do. And we get to learn a lot from these communities. We understand, and ironically enough, all of these efforts that we have been doing in the past, as well as the current pandemic effort, everything ties into climate change. Their rights have been challenged because of climate change. Their very existence is challenged because of climate change. So I'm going to kind of dive in later on, explaining why climate change is causing what they, in the situation that they are right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, great stuff you're doing, Neha, and like while being there in the US, you've been helping and evangelizing at the same time. This thing around before I move to the next guest, there is an announcement. Essentially, I don't know if everyone saw that. This is specifically to the audience, and this is just essentially like tell us what you're doing right now in your own capacity to improve the planet. So if you can just like send in messages, and there is like a chat box available for everyone. If anybody wants to even speak, just let me know. I can allow you to kind of get into this conversation as well. And one of our speakers, Mehul Shah, he's actually going to be rewarding people who are going to be volunteering for this. So thanks a lot, Mehul, for that. Yeah, and yeah, let me just go to him. I'd like to understand what you've been doing. I mean, in terms of like how you got interested in this space, what you've been doing so far, in terms of, because I mean, you and I we know, like, we've traveled a lot together as well, going to different places, and I've learned a lot of things in terms of being mindful in like going to different places in the US or even in India for that matter. So yeah, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm also learning lots of new things towards the nature and how to behave in the nature. First thing I learned is human beings have really bad attitude. They think they are superior, but this pandemic taught us all that we are not, and it's like a very small organism can shut us off. So that's I was always very keen towards what's going on in the environment, but then I started learning a small habits which can change or which can make a big impact towards nature if everyone starts doing that. So I always feel like we should not look towards a big organizations or, as Yogesh said, like Microsoft or any other to make the change. We have to change our habits to make big impacts in the environment. So I do few things I learned online or learn from other people to make an impact. Also, I have started this humans were here movement. So the thing is, currently, if humans goes anywhere in the nature, they put a big footprint or other stuff there, and I just want to change that. So when you say humans were here, I want to see that nothing is left behind when they go to the nature. So yeah, that's it. And I'll be talking more about how I changed my habits to make an impact on the on the environment. Thanks.
Great, thank you for that, Mehul. And so now coming towards the tree man, Abhishek, do you want to introduce what you do and how you've got interested in this space?
Well, I'm a guy who does too many things at one time, and that's how I've always been. My association with nature uh, was actually how would I put it? It actually soaked me in. So this is from my college days when I was doing my masters, and I was part of SIBM where when we opened the windows, our college was in the mountains in Murshi. So when we used to open the windows, especially in the rains, the entire cloud would come in and even wet books, laptops, everything. So it was mesmerizing. Murshi, if you know, is a very very beautiful space. So it was a very mesmerizing place. But since we were on the top of the mountain and post rains came the winters and followed by the summer, the what started hitting me hard was the mountains turning brown, and I'm sure
Right.
all of us must have realized and felt it when the seasons change. It really, really, really does a lot of impact, and especially I was a outward-looking student, so I used to keep looking out. That's what I mean by that. So, so mountains were always been my space to be in, and since the mountains started changing, it started hitting me hard, and came a time where I realized that more than my business management understanding, I'm more interested in one question that is lingering for a year then was why are mountains brown?
Hmm.
And so that actually triggered my sense of trying to be a part of a change.
Right.
And then some interesting events kept happening. We even got locked down into a space where we started. Um, me, since I was doing my communication and marketing, I had a friend who was an engineer, and then we hijacked a friend who was an agriculturist. So we all sit together in one room and we lock down ourselves to break things down. And yeah, we thought we could be a part of the solution, and that's how it actually started. And so yeah, for the past 10 years, um, I've been planting trees. Uh, we've been working a lot on bird conservation, water conservation, and actually, what also helped me more than any other thing was that Pune is a city where you find intellects from all over. I mean, we could throw a stone and talk about America's economy too. Nothing new about that. If you were a part of Pune, you'll understand this joke. So uh, the point that I'm trying to come is there's so much of research. There's so many PhDs. I don't know on planet if there are so many PhDs that they are there in Pune.
Yeah.
Them are from environment. So we realize that what we need to do is convert this knowledge, this rich amount of knowledge on environment that is prevailing. So much of research and so much of thesis has been there into groundwork. And since we came from a working background where we knew how to, take things from the knowledge front and convert it and start implementing it into a practical manner, which could be measurable, which could be impact driven, and so on and so forth. So this is how we actually started. So you know, I involved a lot of colleges, agriculture college, environment science colleges, students, and it's been a 10 years journey. We've been doing a lot of work on large scale. I always believe that there is a tree in every individual. We all have a tree in our heart. All we need to do is bring that tree out from the heart and bring it to ground. And once you bring it to ground, all you need to do is just make sure you nurture it for 2 years, and from there, you know, the trees will always be with you and after you. That's what I believe. Uh, my organization's tagline is also respecting Mother Nature. So all we are doing is making sure that we are respecting what was a part, and of course, this is how the whole process began. But yeah, now we have been involved in large-scale afforestation. Recently, we've just taken a hill in Pune also, uh, and by now we've taken some 400 acres of land under green cover. We are calling it creating the lungs of Pune city.
Nice.
We've already done. So yeah, a lot of these things are there. I'll talk as we proceed further. But broadly, that's been the outlook of the organization, and that's what we've been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you, I mean, you put it so beautifully by saying like we have like everyone has a tree like inside of us. So, and I like the way it transitioned from you just liking or like just being curious as to why the
Correct.
mountain is brown, and like then having like the entire journey to kind of have the entire hill to be green, and that being the lung of the city. Amazing. Thanks for sharing that story, Abhishek. You're doing great stuff. I'd like to move to Shubham. Shubham has co-founded something called Let Me Breathe, and
Right.
I've been following that platform for a while. So Shubham, do you want to give us a little like background of how you came up with this idea and what all you've done in this space so far? You're on mute, Shubham.
Yeah, thank you, Pratik. So basically, I'm a mobile journalist and I'm also an environmental journalist. And what we do at Let Me Breathe is basically Let Me Breathe is right now India's largest storytelling network dedicated to sustainability and pollution. We give space to people who are doing great work on environment, and also, so basically what we do, we train people on how they can tell their stories on environment. We give them space. We basically try to encourage people to tell stories on environment and provide them storytelling method through which more stories can come through. And these stories are coming from, so what is happening in media space and everywhere, we all see environment is such an important thing. And like Abhishek, Neha, Mehul, many people are in India who are doing great work, but their stories are not coming out. So what we do at Let Me Breathe is basically tell their story. Also, from, as Neha said, most of the people who are suffering from climate change are people who are at the very lower stage and who are working very hard, and like tribal people. And so we try to go there, and we try farmers, we try to go there, and we try to uh, basically give them tools so that they can tell their stories. So during pollution time, when the pollution started heating up, all the people started saying that why, like Delhi is the media capital, so everyone start pointing Delhi is the most polluted cities. And what's the reason of pollution? Because farmers are burning stubble. So what we did, we went to farmers and asked them why they are burning the stubble, but their voice is not coming out. So we go there and we just not only tell that stories, but we also empower them to tell their stories continuously. So from last 2 years, we are seeing that they are continuously trying to interact with government, trying to interact with media to tell their own stories. We do with coal. So we do right now we are working with a lot of people who are working on coal. So right now, if you see, if you know Singrauli is in Madhya Pradesh, the power hub of India. So
Right.
basically, if you Google Singrauli, you will not find many stories on synchronously. Why? Because a lot of regulations are breaking, and a lot of things are happening there because there is no regulation, because big companies are running, Reliance, Tata, everyone is running there. So what we do, and the communities living there are at very vulnerable stage. So we went there, we trained them on mobile storytelling, and we have seen great stories coming from there. Like a girl who is like 16-year-old, she sent us a story that how coal dust is coming into the food she is cooking. So basically shot a video that, okay, see, I am boiling water and you can see coal dust. She sent us a video that we have to broom the whole house 3 and 4 times because there is so much coal dust coming into our houses. So we do a lot of stories with people who are basically both sides, who are working on environment, trying to give them voice, and second, who are suffering from environment.
I mean, Shubham, it's great you actually spoke of, the coal dust, because I think one of the real environmental problem is still the reliance on fossil fuels and sort of these polluting fuels like coal. And I was just reading recently that because of lockdown, the air quality has improved. But, one of the fast ways governments are finding to kickstart the economy is going back to the old polluting ways. So I was seeing that, when China shut themselves down for a month or 3 months, and when they started again, their reliance on coal was huge, and the amount of projects they've signed up in the 3 months this year has been larger than the entire of last year. So this reliance on coal and some of these polluting fuels will continue to trouble us.
Yeah, not only China, Yogesh. Right now in India, this is happening. Our environmental ministry just cleared like major projects which are basically violating environmental rights. Right now on Twitter, if we go, there is a hashtag trending to save Uttarakhand forest. Right now, a lot of environmentalists are trying to trending like more than 3 lakh trees are going to cut there because they just want to kick us there. So everyone is talking about lockdown, and there's a lot of things happening in COVID. So they are trying to basically pass all the laws which they are not able to pass earlier. They're trying to kick basically all the factories and fast. They want to hold the process right now. So a lot of things is happening in India right now regarding environment, which is very dangerous.
I just want to add to Shubham. One, he's doing a great thing. I don't want to interrupt you, but if you see, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about electricity being the next generation,
Correct.
which will help us to reduce. A lot of us, we feel that switching to electricity is going to be a good solution. But I want to tell you that India's till at least, so I read a report few years back. I was trying to work on a book with somebody. It said that almost 66% of India's carbon footprint comes from coal,
Yes.
because we burn the coal to produce electricity. So electricity is not going to be the immediate solution till the time we work on coal as a medium of powering our nation. Uh, but yes, also the grid lines and everything. There are numerous challenges onto that. But just to complement to what Shubham was saying, that so much of coal, like I know that I stay where there is a lot of wind that
Yeah.
comes in, so much of dust comes in. So I
Yeah.
imagine how much of coal would be a part of the
So this
household.
is not, this is, yeah, this isn't just limited to China or India really, So I was also reading the impact COVID and the lockdown has had on different cities in the world. And one striking example is the difference in the CO2 emissions noticed in Paris as against CO2 emissions drop in New York. And in the lockdown period in Paris, 72% reduction in CO2 emissions. Compare that to New York. How much of CO2 emission reduction have we seen? 10%. And why is that difference? It is because Paris as a city is powered by renewable sources of energy as well as nuclear power. As against that, New York is still powered by fossil fuels and over reliance on coals. So, it's not different cities depending on how they are powered are actually, we're going to see slightly different impact there.
Yeah,
I
but
think, yeah, Neha
yeah, yeah.
wants to make a point.
She has to unmute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, and well, New York's history with fossil fuels and electric renewable energy goes back to the, well, I actually have a slide on that if I can ever take you through, but it's kind of in a sequence. So it actually, you'd be surprised how far back renewable energy uh, inventions uh, that we were supposed to do, we probably would be a completely renewable energy sourced planet had it not been for the fossil fuel industry. As far back as the 20th century, like literally the entire 20th century would be uh, only developing renewable energy sources, be it electricity, be it transport, be it heating, uh, sources for colder
Right.
countries. But no, fossil fuel industry said that, no, I think we have enough money to promote
Power the
ourselves.
governments. And I think, that government and nexus with the old sort of, energy resources, I think that's one of the nexuses that is continuing to trouble us. And unless, the energy industry itself starts shifting the gears to say we are going to become slightly more renewable that balance doesn't look like changing very soon. Pratik, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just to the point that you were making of comparing, let's say, Paris to New York City with the fossil fuels and the renewable resources that Paris uses. I think it's pretty common to have that kind of a analogy with most European cities
Yeah.
versus most North American cities. I mean, that's something that we can definitely. I mean, if we take, let's say, examples of like any area in Sweden or Norway or Scandinavian countries, essentially, they are far ahead in terms of the way they are using their resources, and they are making like efforts in making the planet better compared to some of the like. I mean, again, there's also a lot of policy making in this, but yeah, I mean, there are strides taken by these countries initially, and that's what I see. That's where I see the stark difference. Mehul, I'd like to, yeah, sorry. Neha, you wanted to speak something?
So, if you see this one particular video on Vox on YouTube, they actually did a deep dive on why is Norway or any others, but they point in case to Norway, is so energy efficient, so green
Right.
in its energy things. The irony of it is that these three countries from Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, Norway, are majorly fossil fuel oil economies. So their entire economy runs on fossil fuel and oil because of the the
Yeah.
Arctic sea drilling. And they take that money and they put it in the renewable energy.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's like greenwashing in a way. Unless they can completely get rid of their own economic, standing on oil, it's a little hard to give them those many, brownie points on
Right.
renewable energy. It's the same thing with Canada. I mean, Canada is supposed to be the progressive part, progressive brother in the North American continent,
Yeah.
but extremely driven by oil, extremely. Also, these countries are kind of geopolitically scared that Russia might just take over, because Russia will take over if these people don't stop, if they do stop their oil economy. So, to kind of contain the bad brother, these people are going. It's like, to make sure the bad guy doesn't take over, the good guys are kind of playing
Resorting
their
to the bad as
part
well.
and keeping
Yeah.
things in a contained environment.
No, I think again, this is one of the reasons we see people like Greta Thunberg come and the whole slew of like activism, and like the way she has been running, like a 17-year-old who just came out of nowhere and is now kind of dictating what the world needs to do. Yeah, Abhishek, you want to make some?
Yeah, so, few years back, we were discussing this point that, see, I'm going to talk about basics. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to talk about the geo things,
Correct.
but what I understand as an environmentalist, whatever comes for free is always taken for a ride. So when we talk about cities, major cities of like North America, uh, are still running on fossil fuel. There's something called externalizing the cost,
Right.
right? So what externalizing the cost means is basically when we buy a bottle of water, we pay in India at least we pay 10 or 20 rupees for a half a liter or two or 1 liter of bottle. So what are we paying for? We are primarily paying not for the water, but we are paying for the packaging and the bottling and the minimal
Transportation.
supply chain of that water. But where is the cost of the water? Now water might not be that heavy of a point to discuss, but when we talk about having paper in furniture or so on and so forth, where is the cost of that tree?
Right.
So we normally do not have the cost of the tree that is taken care. There are very strict laws that are already in place by the government in India, where if you see that if one tree is being cut, you need to plant 5 trees, so on and so forth. Nobody follows that all over the world. I've also seen this in major conferences where everyone talks about you know uh, the protocols and other things, but when it comes to the cost, externalizing the cost, like countries like America, even if or very few countries in Europe, like who are supplying nuclear power to India, but they're still not nuclear powered themselves. I'm not just talking about nuclear as a subject, but anything that powers a green energy. Uh, so by now we could have been a completely power efficient country, a planet, half of it through, but only few countries are putting their efforts into it. So I just wanted to bring this point of externalizing the cost. We need
Correct.
to look at externalizing cost on everything. When we use and throw material, we
Yes.
are only paying for the transit of that material and the production of the material, not the material by itself. There are numerous excellent videos where they've explained this, but I just wanted to add that as a planet we have failed completely, that we still couldn't find solutions to really be a part of that those systems, because yes, we like Pratik just pointed out, we needed people like Greta Thunberg who could come and tight slap us, because we are still not awakened to this point where we are still ready to accept that we are in a doomsday already.
Yeah, I, I, I think this COVID-19 thing is a good thing, because now citizens are in like really thinking like how environment is important to us and why environment is important, and they are talking about it. When citizens talk about it, the policy people start thinking about it. So I think this might kickstart the green economy conversation, at least in various countries and even in our country also. That some policies are going to be centric and citizens are going to demanding more clean environment, because we all are seeing this, that environment is so important right now for us, and without taking care of environment, nothing is important.
I think
I just want to add a point there. We forget things fast. So these had these things happen earlier also, but we never learned anything about from this. So yeah, maybe right now we are thinking about, yes, environment is important, but as soon as things are open, you will see only 1% who are talking from day one. They'll just discuss again, and the things will continue. I just want to say when we discuss about countries, it doesn't make sense the until the people of country create a movement. So countries or the upper management only will take decisions if their citizen supports them. So I think everyone, right now we have time, sit down, check what we are doing every day. Do we have a good uh, habits towards the nature? You cannot change renewable energy to the renewable energy in day one, but you can still limit your whatever use of fossil fuels by yourself. So every person just limit 1 liter per month or per week also. There is a huge impact. So yeah, there are a few things need to be changed, your habits. Just if you do that, um, small things here and there, we can make a big change. When we talk about European countries, if you see the habits of their citizens also, if you see them, they are like, we feel like they are gods. How they are taking things in their hands. They don't wait for the government to change things. So yeah, I just wanted to add this point. um, we are in lockdown, we are not going outside, so go inside, think about it, how we can small change like small things and make a big impact. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think there's also a valid reason why citizens should do this, because when there was a research conducted to see where were the highest number of deaths occurring due to COVID, 78% of the deaths came from five most polluted cities. So that established a clear linkage that if you've been breathing poisonous air, you're also more susceptible to falling to some of these pandemics. And there's obviously a belief that this won't be the only pandemic we've seen, and there could be more. And I think this is a point wherein citizens have to realize that this is the time when we all start working towards making those small changes. Now, Mehul, you did say that cutting down on some bit of fossil fuel usage, but then how about reducing some bit of non-essential travel? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah.
What I say, travel, it's a big thing. I cannot say anything about that, but what I can say is, whenever you are making short trips for your errands, just don't
Yes.
make individual trips. So if you want to do things, do 10 things together. Every time you start a car, the cold start take more fuel than if it's already hot. So travel, it's my passion. So, but there also you can have a few things to take care. But day-to-day life, you may get vacation once, but in day-to-day life, you can make these small things, like always make all the errands in one go. Try to use bicycle once a week or twice a week.
Yeah.
Don't take elevators, take
Yeah.
stairs, all these things. Also, when your gadgets are connected to the socket and they are off, they are not totally off, they're like 10-15% power they are fetching. So yeah, you can just remove them from the sockets. All these small things that I think
Adds up.
that's I try to do every day, and that can add up. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to what Yogesh and Mehul just mentioned, I mean, in terms of seeing how we are traveling, and I've been traveling a lot for the past 3 to 4 years, not quite much last year, but and nothing, almost nothing this year. But one thing I try and like do it from my side is identify how much carbon footprint is something that I'm contributing towards. And there are different websites available on the internet where you can go and check your carbon footprint. You can go to that granularity in terms of measuring what your carbon footprint is essentially going to be, or forecast that for an entire year, and see how you can offset that. I mean, that's another issue altogether when you talk about offsetting,
Yeah.
and some find it good, some find it bad. That's also another like a debate altogether. But just understanding how much carbon footprint you are contributing towards is something. And there are airlines today that they allow you to kind of, or websites today, they allow you to kind of know how much carbon footprint will you be contributing towards when you fly on that flight.
So just to establish, what is the seriousness of this? I'll come to you, Abhishek. But just sort of, stretching that linkage between the carbon creation because of your air travel, right? So 2 trips between London to New York return, 2 trips, London to New York return, the carbon footprint is equivalent to an entire year's electricity supply to an average UK house. Just 2 trips. So if you just make 2 trips in a year, that's going to be more energy burned, more carbon dioxide created than the entire year of powering your house. Just to put things in perspective. Abhishek, you wanted to say something?
Well, I don't air travel much, but
Mm,
I land travel a lot. So I'll simplify that in terms of land. Um, so every liter of petrol or diesel that we put our gas accelerator onto, every liter produces 2.5 to 3 kgs of carbon.
right.
So every liter that we use to transfer, travel, go in and out. See, small little things now we need to really start quantifying and start breaking it down, because these are so 3 kgs of carbon per liter, and we've done a broad understanding about how much does a tree inhale every year. So if you do the technical calculation, it varies from trees to trees, but broadly from 15 kgs to 27 kgs, depending on which tree, is the yearly capacity of intake of a tree. So each day and each trip needs so many trees. But yeah, that's the disbalance. When we talk about environmental disbalance, it has to be a measurable disbalance. It's just you know because we fly in a plane, it's a shared plane, so we
Yeah.
understand that it's shared between numerous people, but we all have immediate things to really look into, and this is what will really determine the entire air pattern throughout. So in India, the transport, uh, you know, every year's transport done by individuals contribute towards 8 to 13% of carbon emission throughout India.
Mm,
But the larger chunk is with the coal,
yes.
with the industrial sites, um, and the gases that are being released. So we need to start individually start quantifying, not the larger things, but the immediate things, because we think that how does this make a difference? I love traveling. I travel a lot, but at least
Mm.
consciously we need to know where it's heading. That's
Shubham, you want to say something?
Yeah. So as we're talking about trees, I just came to remember that why we need more national parks. And I know one person in the panel, Pratik, goes to a lot of national parks. So I want to understand how, like in US, the national parks are working, and what's the system there, and what's the craze of visiting national parks there. Because I don't see in India a lot of people are enthusiastic about. You don't know how many national park biodiversity we have and how we can make India national parks more basically trendy, because we need more national parks in India. If you want to I want to ask a question, Pratik.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for bringing that out. Yeah, I mean, I do love national parks, and when I say national parks, the concept of national parks actually came or started in the US. I mean, and the first national park, designated national park, was essentially Yellowstone National Park. So I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties there, but in terms of in terms of the liking, I mean, I was just like a huge fan when I used to kind of see my friends go, specifically Mehul here, who goes. I mean, who goes to like, who has probably been to like more national parks than I have in the US. So just like that understanding of, okay, so many of my friends are visiting these amazing places, and something that I can be a part of. So that's how I started visiting. When it comes to the evangelism around national parks, I don't see much here compared to, let's say, in the US. And I have discussed this with different people or different set of audiences. Is probably because the funds, I mean, that's the infrastructure that's there behind something such so enormous as, let's say, national parks. Because there's I think Barack Obama, when he was the president, he contributed to a lot of let's say, like the conservation of these national parks, and there are like more national parks added during his presidency than anyone else's. So that's something I've seen. The way they also promote is completely different. They consider it as I don't know, like as like a brand. I mean, and historically, if you see, yeah, I mean, Americans have been like good at marketing. So I don't know, like specifically why it's not the case in India. I have visited a couple of national parks in India, specifically Corbett, and I'm sure most of you would know Corbett. But yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the reasons. I think the other reason is also safety. Because in most of the US national parks, you really literally do not have to think about safety. I mean, yes, you have to think about safety, let's say, from the wildlife, but not from like other humans, as opposed to
security point of view.
Yeah, security standpoint, as opposed to what you see in India. So that's these are a couple of reasons, but yeah, that's a completely that can be a bigger debate. Mehul, do you want to add
I want to add something. So, US is like, they got independence way earlier than India. So you cannot compare India with US right now. Also, they made a big effort to get these national parks like working, and also the citizens are very what you call, they are they look at it as you are going to a theme park. So we need to tell or teach them to our kids. So also the travel concept, what I see is it's very new to India. I don't know, my parents or our parents never looked at it as something which is required or necessary to our life. So we used to go to like mama's house or boa's house for a vacation, but we never thought like going to the nature for a vacation. But here, if you see, going to the national park is one thing, but every week there is some kind of camping outside going on, like father-daughter camping, mother-son camping. It's like a family ritual. So we need to start doing that. We need to teach our kids to respect the nature. All these things, they started way earlier than us, but if we start now, we can catch up, because at that time social media was not there. Today it's here. We know thing gets viral very fast. So if we start teaching our kids, I think we'll be like US very soon. Yeah.
I'd like to add a few things to that. Whatever Pratik and Mehul have shared is absolutely true. They do take their national parks as a matter of pride. They are scattered in practically every state in the United States. If you have a desert, there is a national park for the desert. The Zion, the Archies National Park. I mean, you can make up a national park not out of trees, but you can make a national park out of rocks as well. Right. So, so yeah, it is a brand. It is an entity. It's a matter of pride. Um, US has a lot of similarities with India. Maybe their history is not as ancient because uh, people think about US history only from the time that they got their independence and not from the time where the native people were living on this land. And so naturally, if the ancient civilizations in both countries have been existing for so long, there are going to be natural histories for both the sides of the continent equally as rich as they are. Uh, India never really took it upon themselves to preserve or conserve their natural resources. Not that US is great at it either, because the new laws and regulations are just lifting regulations on cutting down on the national forests themselves here, the national parks, as you say, because of the oil pipelines and other things. So that's another story. But nevertheless, in the minds of people here in the US, your state national park is a matter of pride. And people in the US don't really travel that much, as opposed, people think that people in the US travel a lot. It's a myth. They don't. They don't take vacations. They don't. If they do take a vacation, they go on a cruise somewhere in Mexico or the Caribbean and sit on that cruise, or sit on the lounger and sip cocktails. That is the US's idea of a vacation, which is not true. Their weekend trips is where they go to national parks. So they most of the northern states only get this window of 3 to 4 months to visit a national park, right? Between spring to summer. So every weekend is a chance to take a vacation, every smallest weekend. Then you have all the national weekends, there are long weekends that keep coming during the summer season. So yeah, it is. And the states are also very tightly connected. So you can go from one state into another very easily in a matter of few hours. So you can kind of visit, at least in the Northeast area and the West Coast area, you can visit national parks pretty easily across state lines. But people talk about the trees, like the sequoia trees and, of different regions, and the trees in other regions also, as if it's some kind of a monument that somebody has erected. You have, and of course social media has just helped the national parks branding a little more, because Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook has just everybody wants to go and hug the sequoia tree and try to show that I could hug the sequoia tree, which they can't, but they try. And it's a matter of brag factor that, oh, you went to how many national parks. For example, Pratik brags about a lot of his national park visits on his passport. So, and you see that.
I have a passport for national parks.
Yeah. So that is exactly. I just told him this morning that this was my year to visit most of the domestic national parks. And there you go. I can't anymore. So maybe next.
Yeah, I think the point I really take from your conversation is, how can we connect people and communities to the nature and find sort of, ingenious ways leveraging what we already have and sort of presenting it in a way that is more palatable to people, so that, it becomes intrinsic part of how we live and our cultures essentially. And so, if that chord is established, then it becomes a bit easier. I have a question now more around biodiversity and sort of, creating taking lands and sort of, planting trees and creating an entire ecosystem. I'm sure this isn't just about planting some, saplings and hoping the results achieved. Abhishek, you've got quite a bit of an experience in terms of, creating these living, thriving ecosystems. Can you talk to us about that a bit?
Sure. Look, it's very important that we understand when we talk about plantation. Uh, for most of us, we take it too naively that it's all about just putting a tree, a seed into the ground and making it happen. Yes, it does happen that way as well. It's like humans. You leave two people together and a third person is born. It's the same way with the trees. You put a tree into the soil and the tree starts growing, but that's not how an ecosystem develops.
Right.
There are numerous factors for an ecosystem to really develop. Uh, One of the most important factor is if we understand where did all these trees on this planet come from, um, you know, you to understand the entire breakthrough journey of this entire process. So, just to give it just to people who would not know this, like you and I eat, uh, the birds come and eat fruits on the trees. Uh, so, when they eat this fruit, the fruit gets into their stomach. When it gets into the stomach, it gets fertilized, and like you and I excrete in the morning, they excrete while they're flying.
Yeah.
So wherever this excrete falls, that seed remains intact, which is fertilized in the stomach, and wherever it falls, a new tree is germinated. Now this is a natural process. Uh, there are numerous. I'm not going to go into real details of it, but this is the basic of who planted the trees on this planet. There are different agents of transfer, but a bird happened to be a wide agent of transfer. Now, when we come talk about planting trees, we need to understand what trees have a science. There's an entire science for, made for trees, which is botany. So there are three or four kinds of different forests that we see. One are native, one are indigenous, one are exotic, and then there are different variations. Native are the trees that are found in the immediate land. They are native to that particular soil. They are native to that particular soil strata, which is the composition of rocks and soil. That's what it's meant by soil strata. So when you plant a tree, you need to understand what is the kind of rooting structure of each tree. I've always seen this mistake that people go on the mountains and start planting fruiting trees, which are nothing wrong in that. But you need to understand that it's not the it's not just the act of planting, but if this tree is going to be a high growing tree, that means its nutrient quotient is going to be very high.
Correct.
And so does the soil requirement of this tree is going to be very high. And now if we start planting these high requirement trees on rocks, a hill is a piece of rock, it's going to create an imbalance. That's going to be a, a stagnant growth to that plant, and it's not going to thrive as much as it was supposed to. So we need to understand, are we planting native trees? Are we planting indigenous trees? Or are we planting exotic trees? Like currently in India, we have this massive drive of planting palm trees and coconut trees and all kind of fruiting trees that we want to plant. Uh, Nothing wrong in the indigenous trees, but native are the trees where all these birds come and sit. They
Yes.
associate with plants which are native. For example, I'm going to just simplify this example. We have this tree called gulmohar,
Yes.
and we have the rain tree, the monkey pot tree. So both these trees don't come from India. They come from Latin America and Africa. So when they come here, what they do is they start taking a lot of resources from the ground. So does the Nilgiri tree. It doesn't associate it with this land. So it starts rampantly growing, but the root structure doesn't grow. So if we have to create a balanced ecosystem, it is not just planting, but it's planting the right land, and that's how it could actually grow. Now, planting tree is a fantastic thing. We all should do it everywhere possible. But what we also need to do is also understand this balance called ecosystem. When we talk about biodiversity, biodiversity means it's coming together of numerous elements of nature. If you don't mind, I might just run you through the kind of biodiversity. We were talking about national parks. By the way, I would like to invite each one of you. If you haven't had a chance to visit national parks, or I wouldn't say a national park, but I've personally created a biodiversity park, which is spread in a large expanse. So let me just run you through, Yogesh, with your permission.
Yeah, sure. I think
No,
go ahead.
please, yeah.
Okay, cool. Uh, okay. Okay, can we see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a biodiversity park that we have created. Uh, this is a very large area of 400 acres, which we have converted into a large biodiversity park in Pune. There are 5 water bodies. So planting, of course, is the first act, but planting itself is not going to be enough. We are immediately going to need a lot of other supports. So we involve a lot of school, college, community, corporates in this entire uh, work of ours. So post plantation comes the most tougher part, which is of maintaining this entire space. So giving water is very important. So like I told you, we've found our ways in the last 10 years how to make a sustainable plantation. So what kind of soil determines what kind of trees should be planted, like I mentioned to you. And then comes the activity of maintaining it at least for the next 2 months.
Mm.
This is the biodiversity park that I was talking to you. This is the recent one that we have created in most of our projects are quite large because I believe that environment is a problem of scale, and we cannot be resolving it just by planting happy plantations of 5 to 10 trees. We need
Right.
to, like I just gave you the differentiation between the carbon intake and the carbon offset. Um, this is the actual picture. This is a lake that we have created. It's a large 8-acre lake water body that we have created, where we call it the Biodiversity Lake Park. And this is an entire bird reserve that we have created here. Can you also see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is a bird reserve that we have created. Now, not just that, uh, you need birds, you need water for entire plantation to survive. But what you also need is butterflies. You need a lot of. Um, I want to share a very interesting, thing. Have you all seen um, this earthworm? We call it paisa.
Mm.
Have you all seen the red color
The-
earthworm called
It
paisa?
coils into a small coin kind of thing.
Correct, correct. So, do you know why is it called paisa?
Not really.
So, it's the farmers who've given this name to this earthworm called paisa. So, when we talk about soil being fertile, how does soil become fertile? Uh, Soil needs. There are numerous insects that work around the soil. They find their ways from the soil, taking the nutrients, taking the insects and other things. So when they move from the soil, they create vacuum between the soil, as in. So when
Porous.
that happens, there is oxygen in this dissolved oxygen that starts mixing with the soil, and dissolved nitrogen, which is very important for the soil, carbon, uh, for the soil, for the plant to grow. So the moment you see these insects in your field, the farmer used to feel that their fields are going to be rich in nutrients, because these earthworms are going to create so much of air vacuum spaces where the earth, the oxygen and the nitrogen and the carbon is going to interact with the soil, and they're going to get bumper crop. So small little insects have a very large role, um, you know, into this entire plantation. This is the water body that I was talking about, with just what you were seeing there. So for plantation, when you do trees, you need to have water. When you have water, the plantation gets sustained.
Mhm.
So our projects are quite technically done, designed. We have team of scientists who work on this. So this project is designed completely for birds to come and land. So we've created landing gears There's a specific way of cutting the soil so that more birds can come in. This lake doesn't invite too much of birds, but this definitely does because it's designed in a certain manner. Um, then the kind of plantation that we bring onto it determines how many other birds and elements. So more the birds, more the forest, and more the forest, the entire ecosystem starts thriving. These are the pictures on site from our aquatic ecosystem. So when the water came, we released certain fish into it. When the fish came, there's life that started prevailing again. With a lot of bacteria and insects and various other things moving around the water space. So the moment there were fish and life around it, the birds started coming and flocking in. So we have 22 peacocks around our space, numerous you know, turtles that have been just there. We don't know how they came, but we also release a lot of them wherever we find them. People saying that, okay, we found them. We say, all right, we'll keep it home. In natural spaces, you can release them. You can see a fan-throated lizard here.
Nice.
These are large winged painted storks that come in. By now, we have 130 species of birds residing in this entire uh, biodiversity park. So, all of these are equally important. But when does all this happen? When you start planting the right kind of trees.
Correct.
It's not about planting. That's my point now. That it's not about just planting. It's when you plant the right kind of trees, only then the right impact starts happening. And for that, you need to study the land. You need to study the um, the entire ecosystem. But yeah, broadly you can just see around and see what is growing good. Find the list of native trees that are there around. uh, that will actually invite. So more the native trees, the more the birds will start coming in, and the more insects will grow. We need a lot of insects. I just told you the importance of it. We keep saying that the sparrows are moving away. The primary reason of sparrows moving away or any life that moves outside is when its food and shelter gets disbalanced. So हमारे आंगन में पहले उम्बर के पेड़ हुआ करते थे, आम के पेड़ हुआ करते थे. A lot of insects used to be around it. A fig tree, umber tree.
Umber, yes.
Yeah. So when it falls down, it has the capability to revive an entire ecosystem. It's that powerful of a tree. So when you start planting the right kind of trees to the right kind of soil, the entire ecosystem starts. So because these birds are not getting these insects to eat, they are moving away because they don't have food. Neither can they create, nesting. So again, these are very very intricate and detailed work. But as a layman, we should always look at planting the native trees, and these are the effects that you can see post post the efforts.
Yeah,
That's
So,
absolutely amazing.
Abhishek, I had a question about this. So this looks like a park, right? This is
Yes.
like a man-made
Yes.
park.
Yeah.
So this is a good starter kit for a national forest. So basically,
No, this is not a national. It's a biodiversity park.
I know, I understand. But what I'm trying to say here is like our forestation, the natural forestation, right? Will this trickle down? Is there some kind of plan in place where this trickles down into spilling over into the deforested area? Is there a afforestation plan in place, or is this going to be confined to the park?
So all this is done on the technical understandings of native forestation. So the moment you have native forestation, this is a confined land which is itself 2,000 acres.
That part I completely understand. But like for example, we have at this point depleted forestation from the native forest, like the naturally, organically grown forest. Is there a place from a, I don't know, from a government point of view, from legislation point, I don't know, how do we do afforestation of our national forests, like how you have successfully done here?
So when you come to these the natural forestation or extending the forest areas, we in Pune at least have this concept, a philosophical concept called Devrai, or the sacred groves. Okay, what you need to understand is it's not about a natural growing of the forest or unnatural growing of the forest. It is understanding the geography and the topography and choosing the right kind of plants, because right now we don't have that luxury of waiting for the natural forest to grow the natural way, because we've already disbalanced it. I understand that's a very we will all love to see how we can continue growing the forest line and extending it further, but right now we don't share that luxury. Neither do these numerous elements of political situations help us to do that. So the best way right now is to understand, if you want to extend a forest, you need to understand what trees are there and just start replanting them, even or throwing those seeds, because natural process takes a long time, because from a seed to a tree will take 20 to 30 years. uh, so right now, if you really want to bring an entire ecosystem back, so we at least in our space have a lot of scientists who are working with us. So some of them work on water, some of them work on birds, some of them work on trees, and that is where we determine this area, how to rejuvenate this area. But like I said, uh, and if you see this is completely a natural forestation eventually, because the right kind of trees have been a part of this ecosystem. That's why you're seeing these efforts manifesting into you know success stories.
Okay. So,
And within, so what we do is post 3 years of our work in this space, in 5 years we exit these projects.
so what happens after that?
So they are living on their own. We plant only such trees which are forest trees. So all these create their own water systems, their own water reserves. They start creating their own an eco environment by itself, and that's how they, that's how they actually thrive by themselves. Actually, nature doesn't need us. All we need to do is plug the right points in place right now, because we have disbalanced.
No, I mean, what happens after you leave? Who comes and cuts these trees?
That's no, nobody.
Nobody.
Why will we put our efforts into somebody who's going to? So
No.
these are not open lands. These are restricted areas as of now.
Yeah.
Also, the forest areas that we are working. Currently, the forest is really working on making sure the boundaries are understood and they are protected, so that all this, there is no forest fire, there's no other things. But yes, broadly, our objective is to plug in the right kind of natural elements, so that the natural forestation starts growing by itself.
So, from that perspective, this land is private?
No, it's a government land.
It's a government-owned land. Okay.
We
So
can discuss that. There are
owners
more
of owners of protecting this effort. I mean, my concern is 5 years you put your heart and soul into this beautiful oasis, and it should be protected from a legislative point of view, because it's legislation that did the deforestation themselves. So, a group of people who are so sensitized and putting their energies into it should not be. I'm just saying that your efforts should not be just um, harmed because the government is not sensitive enough. That is what, because there are people like you who are doing this massive scale projects, and the concern that that people have is like, just going from one space to another and not taking, like you just said, 30 and 40 years is like the minimum requirement for a tree to actually mature and create the biodiversity that it's actually needed. But unfortunately, you know what happens in a 30 and 40 years human lifespan. People forget.
I wanna add to a point here. This is what I've learned being a tree planter, that we, our jobs to do the effort. But I'll
Yeah.
give you an example, how nature itself is very powerful than any of our efforts. Just to give you an example is why I'm saying this. So we had planted a large space, and we were doing the grass cutting there, because post rains there's a lot of grass that grows. While we were cutting the grass, because these areas are quite vast, there was a high tension wire going from above, and these were summer days, and one high tension wire just broke down, and it had sparks. So that entire area caught fire, because these are wide areas, and there's a lot of wind. So a whole patch of plantation had just burned down in the matter of 15 minutes. Uh, but So I was shattered, like you would be disappointed to hear that. But this was summer, and summers followed by rains in India. So the
Mm.
moment we hit the rains, I revisited this place after a month, and you would not believe. By then, I thought trees, but every tree started shooting small shoots out, and that is where I got my confidence that whatever I am doing or anybody is doing, is we are only doing our part of doing it right. At that day, I realized how powerful a tree is. Even a fire could not kill it.
Mm.
It started regenerating by itself. I understand you're talking from the policy decision, you're talking about sustenance point of view.
Urbanization.
Uh, well, look, I will confine myself as a forest planter, and I can only talk about certain policies before we get into a project. We make sure all of them are taken care broadly. But like we as a planet, we are a planet of uncertainty. So we do our part very well. We take care. A lot of things don't go off hands. But there are things like forest fires. What do we do about it? There are things
I mean,
like
nat-
flus.
so
You know,
natural occurrences is not something that we should concern ourselves about, right? As it's never the natural occurrences. It's never
you know.
nature. That
Like
is that is the
I've
problem. It's
I've
all
learned this. I've learned this now that I'm working on a confined area. Even there, things go out of hand. And now that I've started working on the forest areas also, I realize that challenges can come from any front. Point is, how well do we design our baselines of the projects, and how do we take care? But yes, there are with environment, the challenges are numerous. It doesn't stop just by cutting of the trees. There are numerous challenges to it. But like I said, we should keep doing what we are doing uh, with the best intention and the best groundwork understanding. That is where the key to success is. And trust me, nature has very powerful ways of rejuvenating itself.
Thanks, Abhishek. I think that was quite heartening to hear, actually, because, well, we all can sort of wonder in terms of what can go wrong. But I think at this point, just to know that the nature is powerful enough to take care of itself, if we limit the human intervention, is a very powerful thought. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to Abhishek's thing. So yeah, great work, Abhishek. I know you said that right plant need to be planted. So we need to educate people about that. Right now, because of all this environmental hype, people are going out and started planting trees. But California is a really bad example where I live. Two things caused harm to the ecosystem. One is mustard plant. So someone thought it's a good thing and planted mustard plant at one mountain, and now if you see around in spring, all the mountains are yellow. We used to have reds, orange colors things before, but now mustard plant invaded all the native plants. The second thing you said, Nilgiri, eucalyptus,
Yes.
that also invaded California. Someone thought it is a good idea to plant that tree here, but as you said, the roots are not going very into the ground, and they started falling, and they are no good. They don't give shade or anything. So yeah, you have to plant a tree, but you want to make sure that you are planting a tree which is not harming native plants. So we, at least whoever in this group right now discussing, they can educate themselves and spread the word. Yeah, thanks.
No, thanks for sharing that insight. And Abhishek, before I go to the comments, we've got a couple of comments from the audience as well. Abhishek, can you tell the audience and the panelists how they can get involved with you?
With me, okay. So more than me, I talk about the organization front. So the
Sure.
organization is called Tree Public Foundation, and the website is treepublic.in. So the moment you hit our website, you can register as a volunteer, and as we do a lot of work, we keep giving updates on email to everyone whenever we have the volunteer drives, and there are certain, so you can get involved with us on that front. So treepublic.in uh, is my organization's website, and on individual front now, right now, with your permission, Yogesh and Pratik.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So since we are in a lockdown, and since we are in a rampant mode of finishing all the food and the grains that we have left on the stores, we also we also happen to eat a lot of mangoes and a lot of fruits that we are eating. What you could do is start drying the seeds that you are eating, and start planting it in the milk pouches that you get in India. You get milk, or you can plant it in anything, so that the seeds are sown. And when they grow, you can just start taking them out and start planting around. Very important is, please don't have seedless fruits, because more the seedless fruits, more we are creating an imbalance for the natural process to continue.
Correct.
So right now in the lockdown, we could do the best is have all these seeds collected, put it in a pouch, grow them, and if you want, I can give you a detailed breakdown how to plant a seed for all your viewers, and we could start growing our own forest.
Amazing.
I always believe we all can grow our own forest. We just have to take that tree out of our hearts and
Yeah,
make sure we planted them
great.
in the soil.
Yeah, that's a great motivation starting point for a lot of us, including me. Uh, so great. We've got a couple of comments here, and I see my friend Amano has joined in, and she's sharing her. Let me just have the panelists, any of them read this? I mean, let me just read it out. So she's a university student studying religions and global diversity and with politics, and the goal is to understand the areas of indigenous rights, and something that Neha also brought out in her this thing talk. And her passion in the field was influenced mostly by the time she spent in Canada and New Zealand. Um, yeah, she became familiar with First Nations, the Maori cultures, and the philosophies, the spiritual connection between the human sphere and environmental sphere in these indigenous worldviews has had a huge impact on her outlook. And the director of religions department, Dr. Lydia Aguzzi at University College Cork, I think that's where you study, Amano, is an expert in marginalized and endangered worldviews, specializing in Adivasis. I think something that Neha brought out. So yeah, and then she's currently doing like stuff that she's doing to improve is learning as much as she possibly can, and yeah, on climate change, traveling by bike, having 90% of vegan. And that's something that I wanted to bring out also, like how veganism actually relates to climate change, and thrift shopping, and food and recyclable packaging and support. Thanks a lot, Amano, for sharing your thoughts. Mehul, you've got a reward for, her to give. But yeah,
Yeah.
for that,
A
yeah, sorry.
really,
I'd
really
love
good
to,
points.
yeah.
Amano put it here. I think we all need to follow these things. These are small things we can start making, like in our life, these small changes, and yes, that can make a big impact. Only thing is, in addition to these, whenever you buy something, try to get into a little bit of history of that organization. Not all organic or vegan food is prepared or means coming from the resource which is not harming the nature. So yeah, read about a little bit about the history. Try to buy in bulk, to also try to buy things which doesn't need a lot of packaging.
Yeah.
Buy local, because when you buy a foreign food or anything, it needs, as you say, as Yogesh said, a trip from London to India may cost something which you don't want to pay in, means
Carbon
to
emission terms.
harm, yeah,
Yeah.
carbon emissions and everything. So yeah, Amano, you are like a winner. I don't know where do you live, but I will get information from Pratik and I'll give you
Yeah,
something
let
which
me just
will,
bring her in, if you're
yeah.
okay, Amaro. I mean, if I can just unmute you, if that's
Hi.
Hi,
okay.
Amano.
Yeah.
I can't see myself, so this is really disconcerting. But hi, I'm in Ireland actually.
Oh, you are in Ireland.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Don't
Okay.
worry about sending me anything. It's quite okay.
Yeah, no, I'll find a way. I'll find a way. What I wanted to add is, the thing is, we feel shame sometimes. So here, all the big coffee companies, they started doing this stuff like they bring your own tumbler and they give some discount, or they fill it like a full if you buy a small thing,
Yeah.
well, small amount. So what I wanted to say is, if you go somewhere where they are using this paper cups or anything, don't feel ashamed. Get your own tumbler. If you're going to a chai wala also and he's using these paper cups, just get your own cup and don't feel ashamed. Educate people. So let's see, Amano, if I can find something. I was thinking about Starbucks tumbler, so you can take it every time when you go
Thank
for a
you. That's
coffee.
so kind.
Yeah, so I'll find a way. Yeah, I'll work out. Thanks.
You know, Yogesh, one more thing that I wanted to add, the way the organic culture that has grown in UK has been a very integral part of UK's food culture now. How
Yes.
people, how the buyers are now influencing the change in the market. I think it's a great UK people have. I think I've gone through a lot of documents where
Yes.
you know, the buyer has changed the entire
Industry.
requirements in entire industry. Um, so I think you know, now that we talk about you know, making sure that now that we've realized that farmers and doctors are all the real new superheroes. We've just realized that they've always been. I think these changes in our food habitats could also bring in a very viable buying habits change. The more organic that we eat,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to go through a lot of people. It directly needs from the farmer to people.
Yeah.
I think that habit has that change has started coming in, but this I think this case study by so many Brits, even in case of feeding the birds, the kind of you know, there's 13 billion pounds that are spent every year only to feed birds by
Hmm.
UK citizens, and it has increased the number of birds and the entire region. Not
Yeah.
that I am advocate of it, but I'm just saying that, you know, now more and more people are going into the environmental balanced. I think these organic culture should really step in because that will help the farmer straight, uh, and that'll help what goes into our ecosystem
Yeah.
as an individual also helps us from all this. One point that I want to just add, what's happening in the current pandemic situation is look, there are two things that we can't control. One is air, and number two, the birds that fly with it.
Right.
Okay, so when these wet markets, when this entire pandemic started panning out, uh, what really started going wrong is, when you start releasing these, when you kill these birds and animals, and it gets this virus also gets transmitted to water and the entire ecosystem around it. Birds are the natural carriers of virus, if you don't know. The birds that travel intercontinental,
Yeah.
uh, like we have flamingos coming from Siberia. They also stop in China. They also stop in, not just flamingos, numerous other birds. So they also carry these viruses to various countries. So what we need to really need to start is start not having these animals in frames, but let them live live. And that's a painting, by the way, not a picture.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is change our food habits, and also stop having meat or wild meat as much as possible, because you would never know how this virus got transmitted. As an
Mm.
ornithologist, I've been working with a lot of avial experts, and we've visited the National Institute of Virology, which is based in Pune, where there is an entire study that is extensively been done on how birds, um, you know, uh, can also are the primary uh, source of transit in the
Carriers.
normal course. But it's not their fault. It's the kind of things that are being released all
By
over
the
the world into the water or into the contamination areas. Unknowingly, they become the carriers of. So you would never be able to stop things unless we arrest our own desires of unnatural consumptions.
True.
I
Very true.
think this
So
this conversation can probably go on for
Yeah.
another hour, but I'm just conscious that we've overshot the time by a huge margin. So maybe probably final closing comments. Neha, you were saying something, were you?
I
I
think
had
Rina asked some
Oh yeah,
questions. If I
there's one more question from Rina Surana. I'll just read that out. What suggestions you all have to integrate general public in the efforts to conserve environment, where we still don't have like garbage segregation or plastic recycling or e-waste recycling, and this is pretty prevalent, I think, in like most Asian countries. So the increased tourism, which definitely brings in more revenue, more job opportunities, but also increasingly damages the environment. So how can that be reined in? Who wants to, Mehul, do you want to take that question?
The first one, I think it will take a time, but how Abhishek is doing, if someone can come up and start doing these things by themselves and help a little surrounding, not a lot. I think that should do a kickstart. Also, we need a movement which can pressure government to start taking these things in considerations. The second thing, I know we cannot stop these things. Tourism is like evolving right now. People have money, have resources to go to the places. But the thing is, if people start being, when you say obeying the nature or respectful towards the nature, we can reduce a harm. But I don't think there would be a big change or big drop in whatever going on right now. Yeah, others can chime in.
So I have pulled in some data that I constantly keep studying and reading about cutting short climate change into very basic things that actually each one of us, if we start practicing and holding our immediate authorities accountable, including the corporations who provide us with commodities and products and the packaging that goes along with it, has a larger impact. So if I can run a very quick few slides that only show numbers, it might just throw some light into what we need to do, because if the sooner you see the numbers of your own practices, doing the opposite will just help us realize what we should be doing and should not be doing, going by what Reena had asked.
Excuse me.
Shubham has to leave.
Sorry guys, I have to leave. I have to write a story for tomorrow.
No problem, Shubham. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I mean, this was great.
Yeah, Shubham, it was nice listening to you. Would like to know more about your stories.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shubham.
I'd love to show your work and love to feature you. You're doing such a great work. And it was
that's something that I thought as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Shubham.
Stay in touch, Shubham.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So, okay, Neha, you wanted to do some add some pointers?
Yeah, a very quick rundown on just numbers.
Yeah, we probably will do for a couple of more minutes, just to be mindful about that. That's all.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So this is what we know of, right? This is what we've been doing. And this is, let's just say that history started somewhere before 1700s. It didn't, but let's just say that. So this is where our forests were in the before 1700s. This is where we are, right? Actually, we've gone even further down, since this data is only up to 2010. And what did we go to do that? Hunting. We started as hunting animals and agriculture and all these things. Then we came down to villages and urban settlements. Then came industrialization, then came globalization, and then came 2020, a fantastic year. So 20th century had a lot to do with where we are today. And Jay Lipman, who is a co-founder of this organization called Ethics, cuts it down to three things. The 3 C's of climate change. That's cookies, cigarettes, and coal. Coal, fossil fuel industry; cigarettes, tobacco industry; and cookies, the sugar and the edible oil industries. How do these 3 tie into causing climate change? Well, they are the reasons why deforestation happens in the first place. You need palm oil for industrial baking. You need a farm agricultural land use for it. You need sugar to grow cane sugar, right? So you need to cut forests in order to grow these crops. Tobacco needs to be grown, and you already know about the coal industry, reasons why they are causing fossil fuels. Now, this is the most important data as to the crux of climate change, to be very honest. This is the reason Scientific American and another study, I can share the links to that study, have connected deforestation to cause more and more infectious disease. And like Yogesh had mentioned, this is not our first and not our last pandemic. The more deforestation takes place, the more there will be carbon emissions, and the more microbial organisms will start becoming more virulent and will start traveling to places that were not used to having this kind of virulence, because the temperature of that particular region is rising.
So no, thanks a lot for that, Neha. I mean, it was great. So yeah, we have obviously overshot in terms of the time, and I really want to be mindful of everyone's time here as well. I'll just, just to conclude for today, I mean, essentially, if everyone all of us essentially get together and contribute in the smallest way possible, we can do a lot more than what the governments or institutes can do towards a better planet. And we've seen that in examples in what Abhishek is doing, in small habits, what Mehul also touched upon, and now Neha is also contributing from almost thousands of miles away, and she's still helping the marginalized communities in India with what all her might. And even Shubham spoke about how he's bringing a change with bringing out stories from literally remote parts of the country, which is also great. So thank you everyone for inspiring us today. Really appreciate your time, and the audience as well. I see a couple of them still sticking through. So thanks again. And yeah, this episode is going to be uploaded on YouTube in a couple of days. Search for Lockdown Conversations on YouTube, and we should be there. So we will be bringing new guests, new set of people who will inspire us to do more. Until then, thank you. Stay home, stay safe, and keep inspiring.